This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at FULFILLRITE.com. What's up, Crowdfunding Nation? Salvador Briggman here with the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. How are you doing? Hope you're having a great day. And today I have a really special interview for you. I brought on the hardware design and technology growth manager at Indiegogo. That is quite a title, Sarah Meister. And she talks with us about, number one, the differences between Kickstarter and Indiegogo. She goes into practical advice that you can apply for your crowdfunding campaign. She's also worked at a crowdfunding marketing agency in the past. So she shares a lot of the projects that she worked on, the things she took away, the stuff she'd learned. And also, in terms of the actual crowdfunding industry, how it's changing and how it's progressed over the years. This is a really value-packed episode. And if you are interested in launching a campaign on Indiegogo, I think she's going to go into a lot of ways you can make sure that you rise above the crowd and the competition, and you can make sure that you launch a powerful and effective crowdfunding campaign, and then you become a voracious crowdfunding campaigner. There's a lot of information I think you're going to like in today's episode. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that if you are interested in learning more from other guests that we've had on the show that are from the Indiegogo organization, they're a part of the staff, you can go to episode number 107, which is kind of a ways back now. 107 is how to become a crowdfunding millionaire with Indiegogo. And on that show, I had on Evan Cohen, and that's actually a very popular episode that we did. So if you're also, after listening to this, you want more information, you want more education as to how to launch one of these crowdfunding campaigns on Indiegogo, go to episode number 107, How to Become a Millionaire with Indiegogo. So I'm going to get into this episode in just a second. The number one thing that I want to leave with you here is that going into this new year, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. You can use this opportunity as you would like. And crowdfunding is a trend that is growing and growing. More and more companies are raising money successfully on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. More and more people are reaching early adopter audiences through crowdfunding. So this is here to stay. You know, when I first got started in 2012, it was kind of like, oh, is this crowdfunding thing going to stay around? Now we're 5-6 years later, and crowdfunding still is something where people are raising 6 and 7 figures on Indiegogo, on Kickstarter, and you can do the exact same thing. You just have to become voracious about learning, about educating yourself, and this podcast is a great way to do that. You can also check out my books in Amazon. You can check out my blog, crowdcrux.com, and also my YouTube channel, which goes into some of the other videos and lessons that I have for you when it comes to launching a successful crowdfunding campaign. And finally, Indiegogo is amazing and they have a lot of great information, so I will be linking up in the show notes 1 or 2 of their guides to get you started for launching a project on their website. Without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. Sarah, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. You're the hardware design and technology growth manager at Indiegogo. You're also just on a great panel together recently talking about female entrepreneurship and really getting funding for that. Looking forward to talking about crowdfunding, all of your advice and tips. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And for those of us in the community who aren't familiar with your background, can you share a little bit of your involvement in the industry before you joined the team at Indiegogo?
Yeah, so I really got my start in the industry when I was running campaigns. I ran campaigns on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and I ran over 30 of them. So ran over 30 campaigns, raised over $20 million, have worked with some incredible clients, and now I'm kind of lending my insights and abilities to Indiegogo full time, and have the pleasure of working with some of the best and brightest campaign creators out there today.
That's really impressive. $20 million in 30 campaigns. Were you running these yourself? Was this for an agency? What was your role here with running these campaigns?
So I was head of projects, which was second in command at Van Alexandra, the agency I was working with. And so I was boots on the ground doing a lot of our kind of client relationship management alongside our founder, Alex, as well as just like, you name it. I did everything associated with campaigns. We had a really strong team. So, we had two awesome project managers, Creedy, who is actually now at Indiegogo, and Matt Schulman, as well as an amazing Taylor Wildenhouse and Michelle Laird. There are just some incredible people doing amazing things now in the world, who were kind of in the campaign war room with us, making sure these campaigns were running so successfully. So I can't take all the credit myself. Absolutely would never dream of doing that, but absolutely did kind of all the nuts and bolts associated with campaigns for each of the campaigns, and have learned a lot through the process.
And how many years were you working there at that company?
I was there for 2.5 years, and then I did a kind of brief, kind of tryst in food marketing and publicity. And then I just, there's something about crowdfunding, I think, for the people that are in it that really have kind of, been in it. You get the bug. Exactly. You totally get it. I have the bug officially. And I think I really missed the excitement. I missed the adrenaline rush. I'm
adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, I'm making myself sound like a total junkie.
What was your favorite project that you worked on while you were there?
I really loved working on the Joan Didion documentary. I think that was one of my earliest campaigns. And that I don't work on documentary projects anymore, but that I just loved the clients so much. Annabelle Dunn and Griffin Dunn, they were just remarkable people. It's been so rewarding to see, Netflix pick that up, and to be able to see. I saw the premiere actually at Lincoln Center. And I was overwhelmed emotionally by the community that was created as a result of that project, and obviously as a result of Joan Didion's incredible writing. And some other projects I loved were, I loved working on the standards manual campaigns. That exposed me to the design industry, which was just really rewarding, and has been a warm and accepting community. I think actually one of the most sticky communities online. They will convert. They care about the projects. They want to see design projects succeed. And then I really also worked. We had a great headphone company called Axel Audio, which had maybe one of the greatest crowdfunding campaign videos I've ever seen in my life, as well as Priority Bicycles. Oh my God. Dave Wiener and Connor Swiggle. What a pair of incredible dudes. Those are some of the best guys out there. I'm pretty sure they are just the best guys out there. That and my fiance and my dad and my brother. And you.
You've seen just a ton of campaigns under the sun. You've seen so many different launches in different categories. So I think we can really pick your brain here and get to the root of what campaigners can be doing better, particularly on Indiegogo, why they should be choosing that platform, the things they should be aware of. I want to get into all of that in this interview, but I did just have one question for you. When I first entered the crowdfunding industry, I sort of had a conception of how it worked. You see these media success stories, you see really big funding numbers. What did you actually discover going into crowdfunding that was responsible for a lot of these successes that you worked on versus what you thought it would be?
It's interesting. I think I fell into the briar patch here with crowdfunding. I have a very kind of storied history of like trying out different jobs, and this just seemed to like embrace me fully. My ideas really worked. So I think one of the things I was surprised by with crowdfunding was the kind of warm attitude towards new and innovative thinking across the board, not just in what types of products are being made, but what types of attitudes, what types of creative concepts. It was less about like the establishment, and it was more about these kind of go-getters trying things, throwing spaghetti at the wall, and so that I felt really worked for me. Kind of as fresh out of college, having worked in kitchens as a line cook, having worked for Martha Stewart, having worked just in so many different industries. I worked at Everkind. It's just like lots of traditional retail, traditional industries. I was associate producing for commercials. I was exposed to like very traditional advertising too. So it was so fresh and exhilarating. And I have to say, I am like haunted by, there's this one party that I went to and someone was like, oh, there was this really cool Kickstarter campaign. And I was like, oh God, crowdfunding, like yawn. And this was before I was ever in the industry. I was like, God, those things, they're awful, and then I got into it and I was like, these things aren't awful. These things are incredible. And these are people like, kind of battle testing these like incredible ideas that are truly moving the needle. So I was incredibly wrong. Yawn, not at all. And so, my whole perspective has been just kind of turned upside down. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting speaking now with people that are still on the outside, people that haven't accepted crowdfunding. I think that's going to be one of the most interesting things to watch. People like you and me and the other people listening to this podcast that care about crowdfunding and want to see it do well. I think we're going to have an interesting next 10 years because we're going to sit back and we're going to watch it unfold, and we're going to watch the rest of the world really truly embrace it. And as I travel for Indiegogo and as I speak with entrepreneurs and creative people coming up with brilliant ideas, I really see that this is taking effect globally, and that, even, governments and, like
it's
Fortune
really
500 companies.
A ton of traction.
Exactly. And it's like we are just at the tip of the iceberg. So, I'm waiting to no longer feel like the odd man out at the Thanksgiving dinner table. I'm waiting for people to be like, I saw this campaign and I know what Indiegogo is, and I know what Blue Smart is. Like, that's just going to be so
crowdfunding.
Cool
also, it's changing and influencing so many of the trends that are out there. Even the smartwatch, looking at the Pebble Watch and Apple, and even on Indiegogo, many of the major projects influencing other categories, people seeing demand. So it's totally changing the entire innovation arena. But I do have to ask you here, if I'm listening to this show and I'm wondering, okay, crowdfunding is great, I can raise money that way, but is it right for me? What are the types of projects that are a good fit for crowdfunding and Indiegogo? And what are the ones that are not so good of a fit for Indiegogo and crowdfunding?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have a lot of people come up to me and say, like, I have this app idea. And I'm like, definitely think twice about crowdfunding. I want to see apps take off on crowdfunding, but currently where consumers are, they're not really like going to buy an app through a crowdfunding platform. They want to buy it when it's all said and done. So, and software is easier to produce, less expensive than hardware. So I think that the savvy early adopter audience that we have, they know that. So that's one thing kind of right off the bat that, I would kind of reconsider crowdfunding. And if you really, really need to raise the capital through crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding is definitely an option for you for software, as well as, like coming up with really creative perk ideas. Like I have conversations with people all the time that are coming up with an app, and they the ideas are a little bit one note. So if you are the kind of think outside the box individual that it really requires to come up with a successful company anyways, regardless, it doesn't mean a fully closed door. It just means that you need to put the pedal to the metal on your creative outside of the box thinking. Some other campaigns that do incredibly well on Indiegogo, I just had a campaign hit over $1 million. It's called Pact, P-A-K-T. They're just killing it. So we have a lot of successful travel, accessories, travel bags, you name it. Lots of gadgets. Sleep is a huge category. But I think it's worth just kind of going on and kind of looking into campaigns yourself, and tracking it for a little while, because similar to traditional retail, there are things that are evergreen, like an interesting,
there are
product.
Different categories that do well and that are trending, even depending on the season, quite honestly. And even just browsing on Indiegogo and even backing for a few dollars, you get to see the type of communication that's going on the platform, what people are sending with their messages, what it's like to be a backer of one of these projects. I think that's really good advice, particularly for someone getting started. You can also see all the different categories on Indiegogo.
And it especially helps with like your level of thinking and like your strategic abilities. Like you're not going to make the same mistakes that some company makes that doesn't hit its goal after analyzing enough campaigns within the category that you're in. And you're also going to know how you are special. And if one thing I've learned through all of the campaigns I've worked on and worked with now at the platform, it's like inching towards the hundreds. I think that it's important to know what makes you special and to really stress and underline that and come up with creative ways of telling that story, through your campaign copy, through your visual storytelling, in your video and in your graphics and in your photography. Those things cannot be understated. Those things are incredibly important. And the more you know about what makes yourself unique and the more you integrate that into every aspect of how you're communicating with people, that's what makes campaigns stand apart.
Very well said. Looking at some of the projects that you worked on while you were at Van Alexandra, a lot of these campaigns are Kickstarter campaigns. So I would be really curious to know, as you've been working for Indiegogo, you've been getting familiar with the platform and working with these entrepreneurs, what do you think some of the benefits are of the listeners considering Indiegogo over Kickstarter? And also, do you have any thoughts on the comparison between the two?
I've got some great friends at Kickstarter. Shout out to Michael Stewart, who I used to make pie with when I first moved to New York City. There are so many reasons to crowdfund just in general. I think one of the things I noticed when I was running a lot of campaigns was that I was really inspired by some of the choices that Indiegogo was making. I also connected with Evan Cohen and John Vasquez and a few other people at Indiegogo through just campaign management, John Chaconis. There's remarkable people on both ends. What I will say is I noticed that Indiegogo was making these kind of push the envelope choices as a company, and the types of connections, the types of partnerships, the willingness to get on a call at 11 o'clock at night and run through, campaign copy with a panicked, campaigner or client of mine. That stuff did not go unnoticed. And I think overwhelmingly, that was consistently my experience working with Indiegogo, and some really profound relationships were forged that way. And just a sensibility of kind of the different ethos in the two platforms. Right now, it feels like you're really comparing apples and oranges. This isn't 2014 anymore.
Yeah.
Looking at Indiegogo, there's a marketplace, there's equity. We have a pop-up shop right now. We have traditional crowdfunding, we have flexible, we have fixed. We have 3 times the tools as our competitors. And those are tools that are needed to market and do well in your crowdfunding process and in your marketplace process. So these are things that make me feel like these sites, you can't even compare them anymore. So when you're really thinking about what type of company you want to work with, is it time and time again, I hear, what's the Kleenex of crowdfunding, right?
The Kleenex of crowdfunding.
In terms of brand recognition, Well, if anything, I feel like it's not about the brand recognition. It's about the brand you're building for yourself. And I think that I'm always really inspired by the people who make the choice to work with a platform that is like really supportive, gets on those, phone calls, at the drop of a hat. And
I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
Knows and values and understands the value of the tools that we have at their disposal that are going to help them reach, the largest audience possible. If I can stress one thing, and you and I both said this, it's not about the audience of like the platform. It's not about, Facebook. It's about getting into your own audience and understanding and appreciating them as customers and what role your customers have to play in the product you're building, in the company you're building, in the team you're putting together. Their choices are what matter. They're going to be what makes you, sink or swim.
Exactly. And I will back you up on that. A lot of the guests that we've had on the show have decided to go with Indiegogo just because of the greater support, or because a member of the team reached out to them when they were in the pre-launch phase or gave them a little bit more personalized attention. So I think you guys are doing a good job on that front. And I also think that it shows in that way. And also we've seen many Kickstarter campaigns go into the in-demand program. So it goes to show that the functionality that Indiegogo is building out, whether it's generosity, equity, crowdfunding, all these different things, they are having a good effect for the industry. And it is becoming almost like you can't even compare these two platforms because they are so different.
One of the things that you said is someone reached out to them. One of the things I'm always really encouraging people to do is reach out to the platforms. That's like the first test. Like, does customer service matter to you? Like, reach out to the platforms and see like who bites, see if you're connected to someone, see how long it takes, and what's the response. So I highly encourage, people just kind of like take the bull by the horns and really like own that process. Because I'm hoping that becomes the norm. I'm hoping that it isn't like us reaching out to people saying like, hey, I see that you're doing this, but like, have you thought about X, Y, and Z as far as how you're positioning yourself? Like, I think more and more people can take advantage of the fact that like, we want every crowdfunding platform to answer people's calls at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, exactly. I did have to ask you, and I've been getting some questions by some of my listeners saying, hey, Sal, why is it that you don't bring on more female entrepreneurs onto the podcast? And that's a really, really good question. I want to bring on more people who are successful with crowdfunding, that are women entrepreneurs, that are, female entrepreneurs. For those in the audience that are, women bosses or female bosses, and they're looking to launch a campaign with crowdfunding, have you noticed anything different that they have to go through when they're launching these projects? Or is it the same thing? Like, you need to build a crowd, etc. Are there anything unique you've seen helping all of these creators, particularly for female entrepreneurs in the audience?
Across the board, every single woman creator that comes to me is a total boss, and is driven and is like motivated beyond belief, looking to see this come to life. And so what I'll say is, I've been incredibly impressed, and a lot of my female campaigners have been massively successful this year. Shout out to Vicky Mayo. She is incredible. And, there are so many wonderful Val from Ava Tech. The names are starting to kind of like flood for me. But these are badass ladies coming in and just like owning the process, because I do think, you know, traditional fundraising is very close to them. You're not the only man who kind of is in this industry that's heard that or had those questions before. You know, and while I think there are some people who kind of aren't answering that call, I'm super impressed that you are. Like, your involvement with the organization, the NYC, has been really, really impressive. And I think leaning into that is huge. And so, you know, I have a lot of names for you that will have people stop answering that question or asking that question, because there's some really cool ladies out there. And we love working with them. That's one of the highlights of my day.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really a level playing field in many ways, because crowdfunding, it does obviously, you know, there are differences when it comes to your story and the type of products that you create. But at the same time, I think we've sort of come to the point where there's really an engineered science behind launching these projects. And there is obviously art to it, but a lot of it has to do with building your own crowd, with making sure you have, like you said, the copywriting together, a good effective video, etc. Are there any other tips that you can leave the audience with when it comes to launching a powerful and effective crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo or other sites?
Oh, yeah. I read recently in the Wall Street Journal, there's this man on Wall Street who kind of like coaches people about like what it means to be an investment banker, I think. You know, and one of the things he said, like, when making decisions on what types of investments to make, always think about like what your mother, your mentor, your maker, and the media would have to say about like what you're about to do. And I actually really strongly encourage that, you know, people preparing to crowdfund do exactly that. Like, it is such a public thing. It cannot be said enough. It is such a public thing. So the more you do to share your idea, share your you know, preview page with as many people as you know, and take feedback and kind of put that feedback into the campaign, the more those people are going to kind of care about you. That leads me into my next point, mentorship. One of the really successful strategies I've seen with crowdfunding this year is people reaching out to past campaigners themselves saying, hey, I'm about to launch this thing. I would really like you to be in like a mentor's circle for my campaign that I can highlight. And, you know, I'd really like your help and your assistance. You know, there's a huge industry of marketing companies, agencies. You know, I was in it. People that can help you like launch your business. But one of the things that I think people don't take advantage of is reaching out to past campaigners and creating kind of a network of support for what they're about to go through. Those are going to be, you know, your allies. Those are going to be your mentors, and those could be like potential partners. You know, Bonobos is a company, or sorry, not Bonobos, Bombas Socks. There are a lot of them out there.
a lot of projects we're mentioning. Yeah,
exactly. Bombas Socks. That's a really successful past Indiegogo campaign. And you know, I encourage people to reach out to them. I encourage people to say like, hey, we're about to do the same thing. How can we be the next Bombas Socks? Obviously not like as a sock company, because you probably won't get a response. But you know, like, I think the willingness to just kind of dive in there. Another piece of feedback I have is, you know, kill your darlings. Like, don't become too attached to the way that you've presented something to the point where you're unwilling to accept other people's feedback. Sometimes, like, you might send me a preview page and I might be like, you need to redo this. Like, you need to delay a month because, you know, this is going to impact the way that you, you know, the way that your campaign takes off. Like, we don't want you to have a lead balloon. We want you to have a super successful campaign. And sometimes that means, like, you know, thinking about kind of starting anew, because you're really kind of taking a first step into the real world. And, you know, it's going to be much harder to, once you're totally public, scale things back. The last super crucial piece of feedback is like, survey people, like build up an audience, give yourself as much time as possible to build up an audience before you launch. If you have 500 email addresses, that's super impressive, but that's not enough of an audience to actually have a successful, like 6 or 7 figure campaign. If that's your goal, you know, you really need to like hit the ground and just preach about your product to as many people as possible until you just kind of have like an intuition about like their kind of every waking need as far as your product is concerned, like what vexes them, what doesn't. That should be second nature to you.
Very well said. Those are some really good tips. And I do think that being willing to put yourself out there and talk about your product and share your story, that's something that for new entrepreneurs is always a little bit scary to be in the limelight in that way, but it totally will pay off. And honestly, if you've put your hard work into making something, you deserve it. It's almost like an obligation for you to share this with the world because it's going to improve so many other people's lives. I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. And people are going to be able to have and hold that product in their hand only if they're willing to actually fund it. So I think that's pretty well said. I did have to ask you one question here. So in terms of marketing, and you've been on sort of both sides of the equation, I get a lot of questions about the actual paid marketing services that are in this industry. So things like promotion, things like Facebook ads, things like PR companies and full service agencies. Who do you think should actually approach these different companies? Do you have any advice on people that are seeking out service providers? Any thoughts on that so they don't end up wasting money or being scammed or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the different crowdfunding companies now have like the people they refer. And I think if you reach out to those people and it looks like they're way too expensive, ask those people for maybe some other people that they know are more within your budget. This industry, in my perspective, is still at a point where, like you need to kind of be careful because it's a young industry and a lot of people are getting into it that don't really know exactly what they're doing. So you do want to be somewhat guarded, especially if you launch a campaign, it's a huge success. You're going to have 1 million people reach out to you that, don't really have, a good sense of exactly how to help you. So you want to just be kind of on guard a bit, not to detract away from how exciting it can be, because it really is. And there are some remarkable people out there. But just that's kind of a big component. If you were to reach out now to my last firm, Van Alexandra, which actually she just launched a new PR firm for people that have a successful product and aren't looking to crowdfund, that are listening to this product, this podcast. It's called Daily PR, DALY PR. If you were to reach out to Alex Daly, the founder, and say, hey, I'm looking for a PR agency. Here's kind of the budget I have. Alex would be willing to help you. And she would actually even say like, hey, listen, here are some people that I know that are just getting into this or just getting their footing, but who have been really successful or who I've worked with personally. Or maybe here's some other vendors that might have some recommendations, that work specialized kind of around your kind of special vertical. One thing I've noticed is different verticals have kind of different marketing firms around them because I think, you become so focused on a given language, a way of reaching out to a given audience. Like I said, some people just specialize in like design audiences, for instance, because they've either seen those as really dynamic audiences and only really want to market to dynamic audiences because it helps their success rate. Or, you find that there are some people who are like multi-verticaled. And then I think it just comes down to what your company's goals are. Are you the type of company that's going to come out with, 100 SKUs in the next year and they're going to be kind of, different categories for each? Or are you going to always be coming up with like a new version of your sleep device or accessories around a sleep device? Then maybe going for something that's a little bit more kind of focused within that category is the right space. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's tough because all of the stuff I'm saying, I feel like you're not going to read necessarily on a blog, even though I do recommend people read the Indiegogo blog, listen to the webcasts and, listen to the podcasts. But, that for me, I think is like a savviness that the voracious campaigner, who is my favorite type of campaigner, comes to me having kind of developed a sense of. Like, I've been reading, I've been listening, I've been watching this industry, and just kind of from what I've seen, these are the observances I've made, and these are some of the choices I've made around my campaign. Dollars to Donuts, those are like the best types of campaigners because they've kind of taken on the industry as theirs, and they're studying it and they're prepared. So that's, I guess, one of my other like lasting lessons.
Become a voracious campaigner. Yeah. Become
a voracious campaigner. The voracious campaigner is unstoppable in this industry.
I love that word, voracious. That's a good word.
Isn't it good? It's juicy. It's like
yeah, that's a good word. I do think everything that you said is really applicable. I think to the being aware even of setting a budget. That's something that is not even on in the mindset of many people out there. Having a budget that you can invest into this campaign launch, very similar to a budget if you were starting a business, because this really is kickstarting or growing or launching a business, this campaign. So I think that even having that point as a takeaway is a great one. My final question for you here, I don't want to hold you for too long. My final question is, you've seen so many different things. You've worked in the food industry, some marketing in that industry. You've worked for different agencies. You're now working for Indiegogo. Where do you want the future to lead for your career? Where can we, check out more about you or about Indiegogo? And also, where are you seeing your own, I guess, career path going into the future?
What a question. I'm a super proud Indiegogan. So I'm seeing a long and happy future, supporting Indiegogo campaigns, supporting crowdfunding campaigners. I have a lot of insight to give people, no matter who you are. So, you could be someone who is developing, a product at an R&D team, kind of, for a Fortune 500 company, or you could be someone who is really just kind of launching a new idea and you have no resources. Regardless of who you are, I feel like this is kind of this is like the Joan of Arc trajectory that my life has taken. There is like a calling, and so I feel profoundly indebted to this industry for having taken me in. And I feel like I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay that debt. There's not enough people I can help out there in the world. So, where to find me? I guess you could find me on Twitter. I'm at Miss Flag. My Twitter's not that interesting, but if you want to, please feel free to go ahead and follow and message and shoot me an email. My information is on there. I'm someone who's an ally, and I'm out here to support. And I don't know, I guess the rest of that is kind of a gray area. What's my future going to hold? I don't know.
That's exciting. Yeah. So I'll be sure to include a link to your Twitter. I'll also link to, I know Indiegogo has a few different guides for getting started. So I'll be sure to link that up in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all that great information for someone just getting started. And I do think, everything that you've said in terms of the way that you've been helping people over the years is 100% spot on. And I think that those kind of values just say a lot about Indiegogo and also about your work with the company. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I'm hoping that we get to, mentor together side by side at WeNYC some more, because that's been amazing.
Totally.
And thank you for listening to all the background noise as I am at the next web conference.
Thanks for squeezing us in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm building things at the Little Bits table, so
exciting.
Super cool. Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And hello to all of you. Thank you guys for listening. Sal is incredible. You have an amazing guide here. So thanks again, Sal. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for tuning in here today. And of all of the different interviews that I've had, I want you to go back into the archives of this show and listen to some of the other entrepreneurs that have successfully raised money on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Today's episode, I think, is a great primer if you're looking to launch a crowdfunding campaign, but you can also hear directly from people who have raised 6 and 7 figures. So don't be shy about exploring some of the archives on this podcast. And also, I'm excited to announce that this show is now available on Spotify. So if you like listening to Spotify, maybe in the car, or you like listening to the Spotify, you have the premium version, you can find this podcast as well on Spotify. So you can now listen on iTunes, you can listen on Stitcher, on Spotify, and also on my website, crowdcrux.com. And this is all to say that this is my goal for you. As you're going through and preparing for your campaign, every single week, I want to be releasing new content to help you along the way. So every video I release, every podcast I publish, every blog post that I write is there to help you on your journey as a crowdfunder, launching this new business, this new online business into the world. So thank you so much if you decide to leave a review of this podcast in iTunes, or if you decide to follow the new podcast on Spotify or on iTunes. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I will see you next time.